All right, here we go. This is going to be a year of learning, 2026 starting early. We're going to hit into all of this infrastructure, private LLMs, private server in your office, in your home, but running all of these services, AI, LLMs, everything. So I'm going to start off with a little introduction of why this matters or why customers want this. Like real customers ask me for this all the time. So you learning this now can help you with customers in the future, but also your own needs. And so, yeah, enjoy. I'm glad you're here. Join the channel. This is paid, so you're not seeing this unless you paid or unless I'm advertising. And that's it. It will really help make this whole year of 2026 full of this information. By the end of the year of 2026, you're going to understand Linux and how to do all the self-hosting, LLMs, no code solutions, N8N, active pieces, all this stuff running on your systems in your company on your own private servers. All right, enjoy. Hang in there. Okay, so let's dig into the why. Now, I was actually surprised by this. A lot of customers I've spoken to, a lot of meetings I've been in where they talk about AI in their company and automations, they want to bring it in-house. They want the privacy, they want the cost, and they want something that they're not always aware of, but change control. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So before we dig into the fun part of the doing, let's talk about the why. Now, if we look at the slides here, we look at privacy. You could use OpenAI or Claude, and they will save your data. It's even in some of the contracts or agreements where they can use your data for training. And so a lot of customers just don't want that. So sure, you could use Ollama's cloud, or you could use Bedrock or other ways of hosting your own and do really well. But I think overall, a lot of companies, or it's not uncommon to bring in infrastructure in-house. And so whether you're a home office, small office, even medium to large office, you can have a system in your department, your warehouse, your office that then can do this. And that's what we're going to go over. We're going to be using a framework desktop, but you could use a NVIDIA-based system or other type of system, because we're not really dealing with a lot of parallel tasks. And when it comes to using websites and the tools we're going to build, that's pretty easy. When it comes to doing the AI, that will have some bottlenecks, and we'll take them on as they come. And then maybe we'll figure out how to use the system in a way that certain things get remote usage because we're not so worried about privacy, but deep reporting on company data and stuff, we use only local. So we'll find a balance there. But many times, depending on the size of the company, it's not so much about the concurrent usage, it's about the long-term usage, the data usage, the overnight reporting, and things like that, again, make the privacy an issue. And then cost, again, you could use APIs, and those add up over time. I was going at $600 a month for one company, and it was just a lot of different small use cases they have going on. Web scraping is another one these companies want to do, where they want to gather data and keep collecting data about their particular resources and goals. And it's just very expensive and time consuming, especially because some of it's just getting it right, and that costs money. And then, of course, they might have a lot of files and RAG, and they just want to keep parsing all that data, old and new, and build up this kind of like database that, again, gives the AI the context it needs, and all that adds up. And then you get into the database side of that, forget AI and the other things that you can now save because it's all here. Of course, we'll focus on backing up and everything, but by the time they're done, even with me setting this up, putting the box in there, 5 years of long-term support with the particular Linux thing we're using, they can be doing well in 5 years and save a lot of money. So cost is a pretty clear win. And then lastly, change control, which is actually a big deal. Many times we get to a place where the prompt is working, the AI is working, and then some company forces us to upgrade because they want you to have the latest AI. And we just don't need to, because the model we were using is doing that job just fine. It can keep doing that job just fine for 10 years. It just doesn't matter. So we get out of the hamster wheel, the cycle of upgrading for upgrading's sake, and we get into this position where we can just lock down the prompts, lock down the system so they just work. And we can even like measure deviations and just have monitoring on in place. So it's nice. And by doing this, we can lock down those particular tasks to those models and just keep it going. It's really a big deal. All right, so that's the gist of like why this is important. And let's give an overview of this guy. So we have this office network, which is going to be where the user is, whether it's an office in your home or in a company, a warehouse, anything. And the round circle represents the firewall. In fact, your network doesn't have ports open that people can't just come in from anywhere. And that's where the system is going to live, in there, so anyone in the office can get to the system. It's just that easy. They'll go to it using normal URL names like n8n.youroffice.com. And people from the outside can't get in, and we can run anything. We're going to run N8N and Ollama. But when people want to connect remotely, everybody knows what VPNs are, but we're going to use Tailscale. It's just a little more simple, I think. And that'll be running on a server, and then it will run into the cloud and run back to them. Now, are they private? I think they are, but you could go further here and do your own kind of like tunneling. So that's fine. There's a lot of options out there. I'm going to stick with them. I just like them. They're not a sponsor. I wish they were, but they're not. Maybe someday. And then the remote person can just connect that way. So we're going to really have this experience here where this particular server can then do all of these different services, which we're going to add on to PDF services, Ollama, N8N, Supabase, and all that database storage stuff we need as well, events, WebSockets, no-code tools like NoCodebase, ToolJet, AppSmith, all these things, BuddyBase. So we can build stuff internally, make them work, host them for free. Free is real. We're paying for electricity. We're paying to set it up. We're paying for the hardware. But 5 years later, it's definitely a good investment. I think 37 Signals has shifted from cloud to internal infrastructure or their own hardware hosted somewhere. But you can see the payoff within a number of years. And some of these companies I'm interviewing with to help consult with them, they've been there for 20 years doing the same thing, and they want to make a move now, and it could be another 20 years before they move again. We don't know, but they can invest now in something that can last. So yeah. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to do, as you saw with that overview, is we're going to set up a Linux. And it's just, okay, we're going to do it. It's going to be okay. By the time we're done with this whole course, you're really not going to be that uncomfortable with this. But we could do this in a Mac. We could do this in Windows. And we might do a second and third version of this after, once I do this first one. But we're going to dig into the Linux side of this. And yeah, let's get our hands on it, because that's it for the intro. We're going to start digging in.
Okay, Linux. Why are we using Linux? Why is there a bunch of stuff in the terminal? What is a terminal? All right, so there's a lot of websites on how to get going with Linux. And sorry, there's a lot of good YouTube videos that I'll share in the description. But basically, we're going to use Ubuntu Linux, and it's so that we can just use a pretty standard version of Linux that a lot of software is compatible with. There's so many options. I'm going to go this route. And like I said, we might even later on do Mac and Windows, okay? So we're going to go to Ubuntu, download the ISO, and install it. What the heck does all that mean? I'm going to share some videos that will show you how to do this. It's hard, but it's easy. Once you do it a few times, you'll see it's not a big deal, especially when it's a fresh machine. Once you have that installed and you're logged in, you're at like a normal desktop, what we would consider normal. Let me minimize everything. And it's even a nicer background than that. Not that it matters, right? You probably get something more like that or something. I don't know. Okay. So at this point, though, you're ready to get going. Now, again, Windows, Mac, Linux. I wanted something stable, something that will work with Docker, something that we can set things up on. And this will run, it has 5 years of long-term support, so we can keep it in that particular office or that situation for a while, running updates in the background. I will talk about later on in the series how to do automated background updates, backups, and whatnot. We can even get to a point where it's a rated system so that it has multiple drives. This particular machine is the framework desktop. It's not what you need, but it is a nice option. But there's so many good desktops right now for running local LLMs. I will also link to those in the bottom of the video. And there's some great videos on this stuff, including your own your own server with NVIDIA, rack servers. It just depends on how far you go with this. I'm going to run it on this because I just want to see how much I can get out of it for office use. As I throw at it real use cases my customers are giving me, and then I'll watch it scale. But I think in the end, based on the other videos and numbers, we're going to have a better sense of what can really scale here and what can happen. And remember, this isn't all about AI. It's going to be about other things too. RAG, storing, which is AI, but storing a ton of files, having them automatically OCR'd or processed, put into a database, into a chat system or UI for people to use and get to data, manage inventory in that database, and have nightly reports running, scanning websites to gather data, a lot of stuff. So it's more than just AI. All right. So now that we have Ubuntu installed and we're sitting here looking at our desktop, we're going to then set up Coolify. Now, the goal here is to start just using applications. So everybody talks about Docker, and in the end, this is basically a nice way to present and manage Docker, but it's also managing the web URLs and everything. So let's just show, okay? So if I go to Docs and I go to get started and I go installation, I just grab this link and I open a terminal and I run that link, and that's it, okay? It's going to run, it's going to tell you a few jokes, it's going to be done, and then you're ready to go. Now, ready to go means what? When you're ready, it will tell you at the end of that, and you'll go to the URL that it tells you to go to. Now, for me, it was this one here. So I think if I just open up that, well, I already have this extension. Okay. For me, I went to this URL here, 10.0.1.8,000, and it told me that. And that's just what my particular machine is running at for IP addresses. So here I am on my machine, just running Coolify. And Coolify is an open source project that is there to make it so you can host your own open source applications that you're building or that have been built. So we can deploy our Next.js here. We can deploy our websites. We can run our no-code solutions. We can run our N8N here. We're going to see. So here we are. We installed this Coolify system, and we have a dashboard. We have our first project, and we're ready to roll. Now, I don't want that first project. I'm going to make one with you right now. We're going to make one called, we're going to add one. It's going to be our N8N, because that's the first one I really want to get into for people. Oops, I don't want to call the project that. Let's go back. We'll go to settings. We're going to say, now it's all for the office. So in the end, I might just have one project. Okay. You organize it the way you want. And there's a production environment. There's environments for whatever you want. We're going to just focus on production. And then I'm going to install. Now, this is what I was trying to get at. Look at all these things I can install. And there's a lot of open source stuff here. A lot of it is just really amazing. Clean for Jira tickets. Clean for managing projects. No code DB for managing. It's like an Airtable, but a little bit more obviously open source. We can just do a lot of integrations with N8N. You have Sheets if you want to just do some more sheet heavy stuff. But this one, now that we have that built in N8N, but we have Supabase. We have we have Neon. So we have all these databases we can use. There's another one called Pocketbase, which is really interesting. But we can do PDF Sterling. So there's a PDF system here. It's really amazing which I accidentally just clicked. So let's just give it a run. Now, if I was to run this, it's going to have a different domain. So it's going to be that. Now, this is a domain I put in there. So we're going to cover that in a moment. Okay. So if I run this right now, it's going to have a PDF thing. I really wanted to do N8N, but let's just run this. This is going to be a long series. I'm not going to perfectly edit it. Sorry. So now if we just run that guy, we then will be able to interact with it. Now, Coolify looking at 10.0.0.1, but that will get a little tricky because, and this is the thing, if we just did Docker by itself, we'd have all these Docker containers running on different ports and things. It would be hard to organize. Well, Coolify is going to run the Docker containers for us inside of our proxy system so that we can go to the URL and it will go to the proxy and go to Coolify and say, oh, they mean this on this port. So it helps to do a lot of the magic for us that then would be really hard to manage. Now, what I'm going to do, though, is just point my DNS to this IP. And we're going to look at that. What is this IP? I'm in my office. No one else can go here but me. But when I turn on my DNS, it's talking to, when I change my domain name provider to point. All right, instead of me blah blahing about DNS, let's look for a moment because it's so easy. And sorry if I keep saying that. This stuff is somewhat easy, but I also know it's not because people haven't been doing this as long as I have. And I just want to make it clear that
you'll learn, and just stick in there and ask questions, and if I miss the obvious, then I'll come back and cover it. But the point here is, if you go to Ollama.api to intro.get-strongbox, how does it work? And how can I serve this from inside my system? And the particular system is on an IP address. So if I was to go to this, and I'm going to show you how I do this in a moment. And you can't get to this. That's the thing. So I think if I do ping that, it's 100. So that's like my internal. No, that's actually Tailscale. So how did this work out? Okay. So let's take a step back and look at Tailscale in the DNS. So first I'm going to look at the DNS, because then I want to set up some stuff. Okay. So with the DNS, all I did, and I'm using Cloudflare, and I don't recommend Cloudflare just because I don't want to overkill. I have Hover. I could have used Hover. I have Namecheap for some things. I could use Namecheap. But the bottom line is, I go in there and I configure my network, my DNS. And let me show you how I do that. See how I can say, hey, here's a type A record star.intranet. And then the IP we're going to get from Tailscale. And I'll talk about that right after this edit. And so now the system knows anything that's wildcard star.intranet. The rest of this. Now the rest of this is getstrongbox.com. Just a nice domain I have, right? So now when you go there, it will go to that IP and then render, even though the IP is not accessible to you unless you're on my Tailscale, see? But internally it still works, because in the end, those are gonna render. I could have put the IP of the server here and it would still work, but then I couldn't get to it from outside the internet. And there's a few ways to do that, but right now I'm okay with this. The disadvantage here is the internal stuff technically is a bit slower, because it might have to do a little bit more network. What's the word for it? I don't even know the right word for it, but it just, instead of having to go right in the network, it has to go out and then back in. But that's even questionable. So we will look at that later as I access this thing remotely. Actually, I should be able to access it right now. So we're going to go look at that as we look at Tailscale. But now that's why I can easily go to the system inside here. So that's why that works in the browser. No hosting, nothing. So if I was to go to this on my Mac, let me do that, and I'll paste that over here as well. It should work once I'm on Tailscale. So there it is, not working. Okay. It's just never going to render or whatnot. But the moment I go on to Tailscale, and I will show this after, actually, let's go set that up now. So as you can see, I can't get there, but we're going to go set up Tailscale, which is super easy. All right. Let's do that, and then we'll set up my Mac for Tailscale, and then you'll see how I can act as a remote user getting to that machine. And then we'll get back to the overall what we're building. All right, this is going to be choppy, but the topic is what I care about, okay? So look, we did the DNS in that last clip, and we pointed it to this IP. But what is that IP? How does this work, okay? So all I simply did, and they make this really easy, is I go to Tailscale, and I asked to set up a Linux box, and it generates a script, and that's it. Next thing, my Linux box is on the Tailscale. What does that mean? It basically means that we have a tunnel from their system to our systems, and that's the next part to this, okay? So now we have Tailscale running on this system, and I'm going to now put it on my Mac. So let's go to my Mac for a moment, which makes this even trickier. And we're going to go download Tailscale. Here it is. So I just went to their download site, and I just click on something and then go do that. And then this is a new Mac, so I didn't have it running. So that's good. Let's go run it though. And let's do that. So now we're going to use their particular server and services as a tunnel, but you might say, doesn't that negate all the privacy? And I think at some point when you do need remote connections, you need to figure this out with VPNs or something. I'm choosing Tailscale because it's rather easy to use. You could use VPNs and other devices, but let me get the thing running. But my point is, it's encrypted tunnel data, so chances are them seeing it are potentially just zero. So then it just does this, which is pretty extreme, actually. Network extension. Wow. Let's see if I can bring this over here. And then, yep. And then I never knew it did that. That's pretty cool. And we just allow that because that's pretty serious. And VPN. Yep. I guess I don't like, I'm not, the stuff I know enough about, but I'm never going to go too deep into the weeds because I'm just not that detailed at this level. So it's doing some VPN stuff, which might break my connection over there. We'll find out in a moment. And Tailscale and authorizing it. Okay, so where is my Tailscale to authorize? I'm going to go here, settings, accounts, add account. I'm hoping it will just pop into my browser in a moment. Add account. Sign into your network. I think at some point, there we go. Perfect. That's what I wanted. And I use Google to sign into this guy. And again, you don't have to risk things. You could use your own emails. You can use your own whatever. All right. So then that means now my Mac should be part of this kind of network. So then what's it saying here? So maybe it needs to be restarted because sometimes after all that stuff, you have to restart. Oh, seems like that's good. Seems like this is not good. Please log in. Thought I already did. Login successful. And turn on and off again. There we go. Let's see if that worked. Still have an explanation point. You're about to connect. And that's fine. Yes, start on login. No, manually start. I'm going to manually start just because I want to see what happens. Connect to your devices. Okay, so let me see. There. Now we're connected. So now at this point, this which wasn't working should start working, okay? And it's actually not the API I want. Let's go do something different here. One moment. Let's go. Oh, yeah. Now I have to reconnect here. One moment. All right. And see, no OS is perfect. Even though I have it on Do Not Disturb, it still disturbs me. That's cool, though. I'm on here in my Mac and Tailscale. It gets pretty neat what you can do. All right, so at this point, I can go to here from my Mac. I just wanted to get the name of it, N8N Internet. So if we go to this, and if we do that, now remember, if I jump off Tailscale, I cannot connect to here, okay? So there we go. We're in. If we logged in, I don't think I have the login here because it's in that keeper thing. If I turn this off and I reload this, we don't get there, okay? It's really that simple. I think it's a VPN concept, but to me, it's a little bit more approachable than VPN. All right, let's get back to the video for the DNS. We've done the DNS and then this, and then the rest of it should make more sense as we start doing the more fun stuff where we install some of the software.
And so now as we see how the DNS works, and it all points to here, then when I go to these wildcard domains or subdomains, we can then see that domain. So in this case, let's go look at something because it's done. And I don't know if I can zoom in. I'll see if I can do it in the video after. But you'll see it says pdf.internet.getstrongbox 8080, but we're not going to go to 8080. We're just going to go here. Now, this is going to be one of the complications I'm going to try to fix. But if you look, we are here and it's not secure, and that's fine. We are secure because we're internal. We don't have certificates or HTTPS encrypted, which I'll explain later we will have, but it might be a little bit like not ideal. I'll explain that after. Because we're internal, we don't have wildcard certificates by Let's Encrypt, because Let's Encrypt is not allowed to reach our systems to prove that they're there. Otherwise, they'd have to open to the world. Now, you can do it outside of that, and I'm going to look into it so that we can still have these nice HTTPS no matter where we are. But that will come later. Now, this guy's saying log in, and so Coolify, with one click, I got ready to go. But let's look at something really quick. If we look here and we look at general, we have that. Do we have any environment variables? And we have this, okay? I don't see any passwords or usernames. So it's okay. Go use your Sterling PDF. I went here, and that's my domain. So what is the login? I don't know what the login is. Oh, it's right here. Man, that's some horrible UI. Sorry about that. Maybe it's because I'm doing this remote desktop style. Sterling, admin. Okay, let's see. There we go. So obviously we want to change that. So it's saying welcome. I'm going to paste that default password they gave me. Now, I'm going to use a password manager. I don't use this password manager. I'm just using it for the series so that I don't open up my password manager. And we're going to add a new one. Any password manager you use is better than none. And we're going to go add it. So now we have our password manager. We have the URL for it. We have the username, which is this admin. And then we're going to generate a password. Again, I don't know any of my passwords. So I just generate them and let the system do it. So now when I go back to here, which is not there, and I just put in that new password, it should be happy with it. Sometimes you get they want certain things. All right. So we're going to go to admin and that. Okay, perfect. So now what we're getting out of Sterling is something I will show later on. So let's see. And this actually might not even be. Yeah, it is Sterling. Cool. How do I get out of here though? Maybe later. Skip for now. Jeez. So we're running Sterling. You can do stuff with PDS and they have an API. This is cool stuff. We are going to use this a lot. I'm going to come back to this later though. Okay. Here's the API docs. Oh, they really did some updates here. Okay. We'll come back to this. What I do want to do is our N8N install because that's the most exciting one to start with. Now look at that name. It's crazy. I'm going to just rename that PDF server. And this will turn our PDF pages into images, which later on we'll use with AI vision to do more in-depth OCR. So we're just going to do the basic N8N. There's an N8N with a worker, N8N with Postgres. This is the one I typically use, but I just want to start off small here. And like I said, we are able to say settings, N8N, intranet. So we're going to have our one N8N. And let's give it a name that makes sense. I don't think this is where it matters, so sorry about that. Let's go back to here and get rid of that weird name. Okay. So now we're going to deploy that. So again, Coolify setup, Coolify login, Coolify create the project in the environment, and then start adding our apps. You saw the little clip on how I did the domain name stuff that was added earlier. Sorry, this is like video editing. And now we're able to add this, and we're going to try adding Ollama next. I've never done Ollama in Coolify. I've done Ollama out of Coolify, but by the time we're done, it should all work. So this is N8N, so now it's running. Now, if I go here, because of the magic of the DNS stuff, it's just there. Now, it won't like this because it wants us to be running HTTPS, and that's fine. I just don't want to worry about that right now because then we get bad bad search because no good reason really. It's just something we will take care of, but it's not the first thing I want to do right now. So what we want to do is do what it said. So it just said, hey, if you're really going to stick to this, we're going to make that false. Now, I went to the N8N, I went to the environment variables, I made a change. I'm going to click save. And then I have to restart. Now this comes in handy later on with N8N. Because you might want to set particular environment variables here. You might want to change a domain name or something later on. You might want to increase the workers. There's other things you set here commonly in N8N. So we'll come here again later. So this should have restarted, I think. That was pretty quick. So if we reload this guy, he should be less complaining around HTTP. Now this always gets a little tricky, HTTP. Chrome does not really like this, and I don't blame it. This is the one flaw in my plan here that I'm trying to figure out how to get around. So if we go back to here and we just click this, that's where you get your links. Joining, try using current, something there. So we did set it to false. I don't think it really restarted. False. Restart. Let's give it another restart. That's a really quick restart. Let's stop and start, because that's too quick. But this should work. If not, we'll go at it a bit more. And we'll turn on HTTPS. I'll show you what happens. So I'll do a little diagram right now, I'll cut and show you something where we show how this is working. So basically, when we set up Coolify, it uses Let's Encrypt to do some nice free SSL stuff that used to cost money in the day. But right now, by default, that Let's Encrypt, and this is in the Coolify docs, is, hey, the Python script or whatever that runs will say, hey, I'm going to set up the cert for this site. Has to call home to them, validate the cert by calling back to us to say, hey, is this site here and legit? But it can't because we're behind our our firewall, basically our network router. And we didn't open up any ports because we don't want to. So at that point, it just can't. Now you can work around that. I forget how they want you to, but I'm not sure how to connect all the dots with Coolify and that traffics and all the thing it runs. So I'll come to that later, but it's just not the most important thing right now, but that's all. Otherwise, it just works, and it's an amazing way to do search. You never pay for certs, unless you're AWS or something silly. But yeah, it's a bummer. Let's see. Sometimes, let's see if I can do that. Sometimes sometimes geez, too many names. Sometimes Chrome can be a little bit aggressive there, but no. Yeah. Set up that recommended. You can run locally. No, I already did this. So we already did this, okay? So why is it not working? Let me see something really quick. We'll troubleshoot this together. So I'm going to go here and then here. So this is the composer file. And if we look here, we have environment variables, and then we can load them here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to just say, let's see, environment. And, does this guy have a clipboard? I can't remember. Let's go grab this again. And let's go back to Chrome. Okay, so it's not here. So I'm going to put it here instead of updating that file. And this is good. You start to see how you can do things. And we're going to set it to false right here. And so then if we click save, now if we show the whole deploy thing, this is what it runs later on. And I bet you, yeah, I thought we would see it twice. We see it where I do it there, and then, well, it says we see it twice. So let's see what happens now. Right there, that's as in there as you can get. So again, this is Docker. It's a website wrapped around all these Docker services to help manage them. I think it self-runs in Docker. So if we were to go to our terminal and get into the Docker side of things, I don't know if I can even do this as my guy. Yeah. Sudo su. What is sudo su? When you have to do stuff as a root user for a moment, you super user do. You just take a moment to do that particular task without running everything as root. Root is that admin level command that can really break your whole machine, so you stay away from it. But we can see that we have some things here called Coolify, so we can do grep Coolify, and we can see some of that stuff running. So Coolify is running in Docker as well. And the nice thing here is, and I don't have Docker desktop installed because I don't want it to get in the way of anything. But the nice thing here is it manages Docker for me. And I don't need to worry about it. It's just running. And there's a lot of benefits from that too that we'll see later on. Because I just don't want to manage the Docker stuff at that level. All right, let's see if that finally worked. Let's go here we go. Okay, so I had to put it in the config. Glad we all saw that together. And now we can get started. So let's do this, and then we'll connect it to Ollama. So at this point, I'm going to open up I think I have an extension here. So I think that I've never used this before. Sorry. Log in. So I want to go create something. I have no clue. Hold on. Yes, I know. It's my email. Remember, you want a system that works. So that's just me typing in public. I'm going to go here because it's already open. I'm going to add a new website. So we're going to go to here, and we're going to add this to the list here. So we're going to say create new. And if you learn anything from this, manage your passwords. Just take a moment. If you have Chrome, it can do it for you, things like that. It can be risky, but to not use a password manager. So I'm going to do Alfred at DailyAi.Studio, and then we'll make it generate the password. I won't even care. And then we should be able to copy that, I think. I don't know if I'm copying. Let's see. Okay, and then Alfred. Now, When we do this, we're going to get a license from them. And this is going to be important, one capital, right? So they have regulations and rules on this. So this isn't really public facing, so I don't need to worry about this. Oh, that's weird. That's a pretty good password. Maybe when I pasted I think I just pasted it wrong. So now let's answer a few questions of theirs, and then let's just this one. So you want to make sure to do this license. This is actually key, okay? So I'm going to pause the video for a moment and go get that. And I'm going to go to settings, enter key, and going to go enter it. Now, I'm going to pause for a moment. You need to do this, otherwise you won't have particular features which are so key. And it's just, you have to do it. So let me go do it one moment. Okay, so it was in my email. I could even click the link, but I might not be able to because it's this. Okay, boom, we got a license key. So now we have N8N running in our system, in our office, and it's going to connect to our Ollama. So technically or typically, I wouldn't run Ollama in Coolify, but we're gonna. But here we are, we're done with the N8N part of it. So what that means is we could say trigger manually. Sorry, actually, let me do this one. AI chat. And we could do a whole little world with our local running Ollama. So let's do that next. Struggle through it with me. All right.
All right, I don't know if this is going to work. I've never done this one before. I've done Ollama in a few other ways, but I just want to do this with you so we can just see if it works together. So I'm going to click New, Ollama. Can I spell? Again, we're getting all this stuff from the Coolify interface on how to do services. We're just doing a new one. I'm going to do Ollama. Now it comes with Web UI, which is fine. If this works, then we'll go to making it an actual service, which is what I really want. Now, we have the weird, no, it's right, we got this, so let's see. But see, the thing is, I need Ollama running on a port I can connect to. So let's just do this first, and then we'll do that after, okay? I think this is just the Web UI. So this is Web UI. It's a cool way to chat with your models. I was going to set this up anyways, but I think now that they're connected, it just is an easy thing. I'll just keep it there. So what is this going to do? How does it work? I don't know. I've always done this at the command line. So let's see what happens here. Docker has a lot going on for it with local LLMs and running them. If I have to run them on the side via Docker, I'll do that. I was trying not to, but I'll just have to. And otherwise, let's see what happens. May take a while. It's probably a big download, but I don't know if it comes with a model or not. Maybe it does. Oh, let me start recording on this guy too, just in case I have any issues. So when you click build on this guy, it can be sometimes hard to see it stop. Obviously, I had to scroll. It will get to a point where it started and you can see the green back here. If you close out of this too soon, I've seen it just not really work. So just remember to be patient and keep an eye on that. Coolify is great though. Again, I can't say enough good about it. So let's see, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go here. So we're set to go. Now we had some issues here with the, what do you call it? Oh, good, it's just HTTP, good. And we talked about this in the first part of this video. So now I'm gonna create my username and password. I'm using this guy here, so let's keep using this. Have a password manager and then try to remember your password. Hold on a moment, let me pause. All right, that took a moment. So I'm gonna put in my name and then I'm gonna use Keeper to set the password. Again, you wanna get in the habit of having good passwords that you don't even know. So this is probably just getting confused by the subdomain. So I'm not used to this software. Here we go, create new record. It's not right. And I don't really care, but I'm gonna copy that. And it just gave me a warning, but I'm gonna do that. So I think we're set. Okay, so does this just work? Let's just see what happens. No models. Okay, it should have set it up for us. Let's go just dig into the docs. There isn't any docs, but let's just go look. Settings. So in Coolify, you have your service, and your service is running multiple services or applications, which are Docker. And sometimes you'll see information here like passwords and stuff. You could click on environment variables and see what's going on here. Okay, nothing. Now we'll come back to here because I'm curious what is that set to. Okay, but let's now go look at general and let's see. Here's where Ollama is running. That's cool. And that's the Docker network, which is interesting. So the question will become, can I do this outside of Docker? That will be tricky. Not impossible, just tricky. We'll test that in a moment, actually. So yeah, I don't see anything there, and I've never used this in here. Let's see what happens. I'm just curious. So then we have functions and settings. I don't think that's it. Admin panel settings. Let's see. Where are the models? Here we go. Ollama. Oh, that's cool. So set up our local Ollama. So users, evaluation, settings, general, connections. Obviously, we're not using OpenAI for this one, though I don't know why it's checked. So then it says, hey, go connect to us locally here. And then direct connection. And what is this? Manage. Oh, that's interesting. I've never seen this with this guy here. This is cool. Go away. Model ID tags. So the question becomes, where are our models? Or I know how to pull them down the old-fashioned way. Ooh, what do we got here? Pull a model. Oh, look at that. That's nice. Okay. So let's go to Ollama. I'm trying to learn how they want me to do it. I'm going to do a simple one. This is not your best one, but let's just do this one anyways. So let's go get this guy, and let's go back to here. And again, we can do a lot of this at the command line, but I'm trying to just try something here. So we're going to pull that down. And we'll give it a moment. It's nice. I've never done it through this UI. We'll do LLM.Studio as well before long. Ooh, no, did I just break it? Hold on, let's go look. Nope, it's still going. Cool. It has to download a big file, so let's just give it a moment. And then the trick will be, could N8N call to that? So let's go find out. Let's just get ahead of the game here. So that would mean, let's just go open up a new one. It seems like I could close that window just fine, honestly, but I'm going to just keep it open. So we went to settings and general. Did we not go to settings? Admin panel, settings. Okay. Models, connections, and this guy. This is what I want. I'm just curious, can I do this? So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to say, actually, I'll do this one because it shouldn't matter. I'm going to say Ollama, and then I'm going to go set it up. And instead of this, I'm going to put in this. Now remember, it has to talk to it through Docker or through the network connections. And it couldn't connect, and that's okay. I'm going to go look into that. We're going to make this work. I just got to remember how this guy works, and then we'll come back to that. Because I want them to connect inside of the Fi destinations, and I'll come back to that in a moment. We're almost ready to show this is working, and I'm curious how the speeds will be. And it's just doing some hash checking. All right, here we go. So I should be able to select a model at this point. Let's go see if it's there. Yeah, there it is. Hello. There you go. Okay. So we got the basics. Now I need to connect them. So at this point, we need to work on that. And so I'll explain that in a moment. I'm going to show it as a chart, and then I'm going to go pause for a moment and read something to remember how to do destinations so I could show you, and then they're going to talk to each other. And this is going to be cool because N8N will talk to our Ollama. Be right back. Okay, so how do we get N8N to talk to the system, the Ollama system? So if we look here, let's see if we can, oh, sorry, different machine. Let's see if we can visualize this, right? So we have Coolify, right? And then in there, so let's just type out Fi. And in there we have N8N, and that's running on Docker, okay? So if we were to just say, where's this guy? Here it is. We have N8N. Now N8N is a service, so we have to remember that because when we read these docs, we're going to see that it's a service, and a service is then basically I'm far from a Docker guy. I actually didn't like Docker for a number of years just because I thought it was overkill. But this is just a bunch of services. Now, I don't think we have more than one service here, but let's just say, we'll call this the N8N worker because later on we'll have a queue system. So this becomes our Docker image. our Docker service, which is just a bunch of applications, okay? But this is in and of itself a network. Now, I think reading their docs, I'm keeping it simple for now, but I could see taking this further later on, and I'll explain that. But we got over here, then we have the service we made, which is the open web / Ollama, okay? So now this is a network of its own, and this is a network of its own. And this guy has the two services running. So that would be the Docker service, open web, and then the Docker service, Ollama. And we can see that when we go back to this guy here and we look at our Office Systems production, and we see the service, and we see the service here, Ollama with open web. And we see that there's two running services. Now, sometimes there'll be more. And if we look at our edit compose, which I altered thanks to help from Claude or something, we were able to then do a little bit more with the network. And I'll explain that in a moment again. But see, this is a production service that has these technically, when I say technically, if you look at the API for Coolify, it calls them applications. So that's confusing because we also have applications outside of this. So if we look then at the N8N one, we also see that it's a service with one service running. If we look at the, I don't know if this guy had more than one. No, this one does not. We're going to set up Supabase in a moment, and that has 10 or more applications running in that service. So you'll see a more complex setup in a moment. But here we have Ollama with web. Now, I cheated here, and I want to eventually get into this, but I'm not sure how important it is for this particular series. But I was able to connect to a predefined network, which this service, L8GWCC, becomes a network. And so that means that this network where these two things can talk to each other is self-contained. But the moment we open it up, and the moment we say, hey, that server, localhost, has destinations, is the moment we can say, hey, let's make those different services, their different networks communicate together. So we have the destination of the Coolify server itself, its Docker network, because it's inside of Docker. And then we have the other two, which one of these is the N8N and one of these is the open web. But now they are in the same destination area, so they have a certain amount of networking ability to each other. And that's pretty cool. I'll try to visualize it later, but we're basically saying let these guys talk to each other, even though they're different services, and we don't have to expose their information to the outside world. Now, we don't necessarily care because this is an intranet, okay? But you could see if it wasn't an intranet, the value there, it's a tough one there. But let's go back and let's just keep it simple for a moment. So what I did was I went here, and then I went to here, and then I went to here, which didn't have a URL before. And I just said, you know what, let's put a domain here. And once I did that, we could not connect to it still because I did forward the port. And so again, just giving things to ChatGPT or Claude, having it set up the networking so the port 11434 will work was just all I had to do. And so at this point, it was able to route traffic to the URL, which defaults to port 80, to then be mapped to 11434. And so I think I could have done it easier by just doing 11434 like this. But it's so tricky right now because like ops can be hard, but if you just give ChatGPT, these tools what they need to answer the question, they typically can. You just got to remember to keep them on task with the docs and whatever other context you can give them. But anyways, I'm going to remove that for now because I'm happy with what it did. And so now if we go to our N8N, which lives here, but it also lives in its own network, okay? And if we say to it here, add the Ollama, connect to Ollama using that particular port, URL, sorry, it can connect. Now this isn't a big deal because we're no longer dealing with internal Docker networks. You've exposed it. So in the real world situation, you don't want to do this, not even might. So that's why I would then head towards the more internal networking. Now, can I internally network this guy? Yes, I could if I just spent a bit more time. So if I was to do something, and this won't work, but if I did something like this, and I spent more time doing this, it would eventually connect. I don't think it will now. You can tell because it's taking so long. It would connect to the internally running Ollama in that Docker container. Hopefully during this video, I'll spin up some visuals so we can see as I talk. But because we're just dealing at the intranet level, I'm going to leave this as is, okay? It's pretty nice, really. So now we can connect. It's pretty quick, but that's neither here nor there. It's just IP at that point, internal IP. So we see that it can connect. We see that I can say hello world. And we see that it talks back to us with that particular model. Now, when I did set this up, I had to close this window and open it up again before it would actually show me the model. So just if you get stuck, just do that. And at this point, you can start using them like normal. So now if we were to go back here and add a model, let's see, I wonder how I wanted, let's see, let's just do this one. There's so many, I gotta learn some more about them, obviously, but this is 6 gig. Let's do this one. I don't think I'll have trouble running, and that's where we'll hit some details later. But now I'm gonna say all models. I'm gonna go to admin panel, settings, and let me reload this just to make sure I didn't lose some settings. I did. Okay, one moment. Let's see. Fill. I don't use this tool much, this keeper thing. So we go models, and then we go to our OSS latest, import, presets, export, download, manage models. Let's go get a model from them. This is cool. And we'll download it. And that will take a moment. Okay, so we have our N8N working, and we have it using local data. And part of this, the goal here is to do real stuff in an office. So we're not going to focus on benchmarking. We're going to just focus on real needs that customers have. So maybe the first need I'll do as a common scenario is, and again, the customers who want privacy, this means a lot. Whether it's turning invoices or on-site work into data in the database, it just depends on the need. Now, in our case, we're going to take data. We'll take it from email. I'll make a fake email we can use and send data there. And in doing so, then we'll have N8N capture that and bring it into the system, put it into our database to store, and then we'll ragify it so we can chat with it. And in doing that, we'll start our first moment of taking data from somewhere, moving it into our system's memory or database, and then using that as a real user to then process it, put it into a database somewhere so then they can see and use that data. We're going to introduce Supabase in a moment so that we can do all that. We're going to introduce a well-known RAG workflow that was released by a YouTuber. And then we're going to have a UI in front of that we don't have to build because we'll use something BuddyBase or, yeah, probably BuddyBase because NoCodeBase isn't here yet for me to use. I don't think. I'm going to look if it's here. Someone posted a PR for it. And then we'll just keep going at it. All right, hang in there. Okay, so the last part of episode 1, otherwise this will go on forever. In episode 2, I got to go get that going, and it's going to be built on top of everything as we go. And we're building real systems. Before long, episode 3 or 4, we'll have a UI using BuddyBase or one of those tools so that the people can use the system, and we'll see how that goes shortly. But episode 1, we're going to wrap off right here, and we're going to set up Supabase. We're going to show that they connect, and then we're going to eventually move into this. Episode 2, that is, where we can do a RAG system, and we'll email the RAG system meeting notes and PDFs. We'll start with meeting notes, and then we'll chat with them. So let's finish this, and then I'll finish editing, and then I'll come back to episode 2 next week. All right, so this is like everything else so far. Coolify makes this really nice. So if I go to Coolify and I go to the dashboard here, now this first project we could just delete, but I'm going to focus on this guy. And I'd rather keep everything in one project for now. And we don't really need 2 environments, production, whatever. But I'm going to add a new system in here. And I'm going to click new, and I'm going to say Supabase. And then I'm going to click that. And it seems they have a few things here. No, sorry. So now we get into destinations. And this is what I talked about earlier. And this is tricky. So the destination is the internal networking of Docker. And then the particular services we have destinations. And I talked about this earlier in the video. And for now, I don't know if this matters because I'm going to be routing from the external port, but external host name. But if I was to put it into the same destination as the N8N, we could mess around with the other idea I want to do. So if I just do that for a moment and go back to here, and then go to here, and then I look right here, it's BYG, BWG. And so if I look here, it's BWG here. I could have named them better, but these were dynamically named for me. So I could say use that network to do the destination stuff. So that just means it's inside of the, it has the ability to connect to that particular Docker network. And again, I don't know, it will matter because I could save time and make them connect faster. But any Supabase is going to be open to my internet anyways. And there's a lot of reasons for that, okay? So now we've talked about DNS already. This guy's just going to be Supabase and Supabase. And no one knows what Supabase is in the office, so I'm going to call it database, okay? Database.internet, okay. So that is going to be my database where I go to the studio, they call it. Now I'm going to click this, and like I said before, this is a service. Production Supabase is a service, and then this is a huge stack. So inside of here are multiple applications. See if I click on one for a moment. Okay, so it just does / and then that name. Okay, but these are all service applications, service level applications. And we're going to need this information in a moment once we kick this off. But I'm going to kick this off, and if you have a slow machine, it is or could take it down. So just remember that. I'm going to click this and see what happens. And it will, like I said, on a slow machine, take it down. So you got to just be aware that you don't want to run this if you're uncertain. Let's see something just to get us some nice visuals. Here we go. Memory. Yeah, that one didn't kick too hard on it. It seems to be okay. I've taken down a few machines running Supabase install, so just be aware. I would say it's your most intensive process, especially starting it up. And memory-wise, in the past, I've ran, I think the number was, I don't remember the number actually, maybe 6 or 10 of them on one EC2 that we then had different applications running. So you can run a bunch, and EC2s aren't that great, so it could be even better on a DigitalOcean. So yeah, let's just give this a moment to start. A lot of things have to start up. This one is a tricky one because it says it's done and it's not doing any more outputs. So that's good. Like I said, you don't really want to close this too soon. Oh, look at that. See? No, I think it's done. I'm going to close it. Now, we might have some yellows because they're still booting up. This one remains red. I don't know why. I think I should go look to see if there's notes on that. They have a good Discord channel. If you join there, you can get some support. But we are ready to go. I'm going to click save because I think when you have a yellow there, it means I didn't save. And then if I go here, so let's do 2 windows because this is going to get a little bit confusing. One moment. And if I go to here, and then I just pop that open. So now you get this like login screen, and that's okay. So then we go, not to there, hold on a moment. We go to the dashboard user name. And now remember, you can see this, but you can't get to this because you're not on my Tailscale. I can't even get to this from my Mac because my Mac is, actually I should be able, no, because I set it to Tailscale, so I have to get on. Oh, that's interesting. So ideally, I didn't think of this. I should set my DNS to 10.0.0.1 for Cloudflare, which I showed earlier, to go to Tailscale. Because that means all my computers in the office need Tailscale, and I don't want that. So I'm going to make a note to come back to that. All right. So here we are. We're in Supabase, and we're ready to roll. We can make tables. We can start using integrations and storage. All right, had a little edit mess up there. So one more thing I want to do before we leave for this episode is, and I think you caught the particular overview here. No, not this one. That we are into this area here, and we're about to do Supabase. And then the next episode, we'll actually implement a real solution now that we have the foundation set up, where we'll do email attachments to RAG with meeting notes in potentially PDFs. I just can't remember how far I'm going to get in that one. And we'll use a well-known like RAG workflow for N8N. But in this one, we just want to set up Supabase. We already did Supabase, but now we want to connect them, okay? So let's go do that. And so what I did here was I lost some of the edits, sorry. I added the memory, and the memory is just, oops, that was actually good. The memory is just Postgres. And then I just did the IP of the Coolify server. So if we go back here now, the disadvantage to this is that I could be using the internal host name of the Docker destination. I will have to just research that more and get better at it, and then I'll share it back with you. But I just said disable SSL and connect. And again, this is an intranet. If this was on the web or if I was doing something that had remote access, I would definitely be using the destinations built into Coolify that I talked about earlier. But at that point, we can connect to the Postgres, and it will then do what N8N does and make the history table. And then I added a quick to-do table, and then at that point, it was just easy. But easy, I want to show you both of these. When I did this, I'm like, where is my password for Postgres? And that's where you go back to your Coolify, and you go back to, let me go right to the top here, one moment. Oops, projects, office, Supabase, and then we can see our Postgres database name and our Postgres password. And so then the next question is, I want to connect to my Supabase. If we go to that guy, this one I use the domain name that was given to it or that I gave to it. So let's go to that. And let me close the tab. And if we go back to Supabase here, so the database is down here. So that's the thing to remember. Supabase is a mixture of Docker containers. And the database is right here where I expose the port. And I set the port to 5432, which is the default, and then I exposed it. So at that point, it was ready for me to use, as you saw a moment ago. But again, I don't think I'd have to do all this if I was better at using the internal Docker containers, but we'll come back to that. So what we can do here is, and I'm just curious, I want to try it again, but I'm already like way in the weeds here. But what I want to do now is connect to Supabase itself, and that's not Postgres. Supabase is its own thing. So let's close this, and I think, let's see, sorry. So this is Supabase here. So if I go here, and then I see the domain here that I can connect to. So I'm just going to grab that. And I don't want to connect to the IP in this case because it's not really, and it's not even 8,000. It's all being done by the proxy system to make the 8,000 that this is on work. And what I mean by that is if I go to 10.0.0.1.8,000, I'm at Coolify. But when I go to this domain, which is not 8,000, it's 80, then the proxy system in Coolify translates that back to the correct Docker container and port. So if I go to here and I put that in there, then again, this is the problem with my setup is I'm going to Tailscale and back. What I want to do is fix my DNS that I showed earlier to be 10.0.0.1 and it will work. But I'm going to prove that by just doing it and coming back here. But the question is, where's the secret key? So with Supabase in the secret key, you just go into here and sorry, I went too far back. And you go to environment variables. So for this one, you're just going to go into here and grab the super key. Now, we don't use the anonymous key in N8N. You want to give it the powerful service key. And since it's protected, you don't have to worry about it. But that means it has all the permissions in the world, okay? So at this point, we pasted that in there and we're ready to connect to the tool. And as you saw here, I said, hey, what task do I have? And it went green there and grabbed the task and had memory. And that's it. I could add tasks if I had that right tool set up. This is a get many, but I can make a create one. That is it. We now have all the guts ready to go for the actual task that customers asked me to do. Email, meeting notes to a RAG system that they can chat with. We'll get that going in the next one and eventually get the UI going with, I would love it to be no code based, but I don't think that will be working by then. So I'll get it going with buddy based for now. Maybe by then I'll have something figured out. All right, that is it. I'm going to edit, get this going, get this out there. Please share, join. This is really going to support the channel. For 2026, there's going to be a whole bunch of these. So you're going to have so much confidence in building these kind of private LLMs, private on-prem systems. All right, thank you.